2, 1. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to today's edition of VC TV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. We're going to be speaking about investing in startups in emerging and developing countries along with markets. There's a lot of lessons to be learned, but there's a lot of opportunity, as we've seen with the digitization of 2020 and now in 2021. There are more great companies and opportunities to invest in them and the founders behind them than ever before. And we're going to be talking about that, some of the advice, some of the lessons learned, and what you need to know of what's happening in some of these emerging markets globally as well. And I'm joined by some outstanding co-hosts and friends from around the world to share their thoughts and insights and on the ground perspective of what is happening in these areas to educate you as well. So before we get started, a big thank you to the Token team, to Maria and Hasmik for making today's episode possible. If you haven't done so already, please do check us out on letoken.com to hear from today's speakers and all speakers of the VC TV family. With that, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. Let's go ahead and kick it off. Vandana, welcome to the show. A little intro and a little background, please.
Yeah. First of all, thank you to the entire team of Latokan for having me here today. It takes a lot of effort to create this kind of a show where everybody comes and meets each other globally and shares insights. So thank you to Hasmik, Maria, Kyle for having me here. I'm very, very grateful. I had my own family office in Singapore and Jakarta. I worked as an investment banker and advisor to family offices and angel investors in Jakarta, Indonesia, helping startups from a diverse background from Fin-Tech and B2B Tech all the way to consumer startups. I was raising funds for them and providing them with a range of services, just as Convanto does today. After 15 years of staying in Singapore and Jakarta, I came back to India. I did investments for a bit and then returned to advisory. That is when Convanto was founded, and today Convanto is one of the most well-known boutique investment banks in India, led by a female founder. Today I'm also a venture advisor with Loyal VC, the INSEAD-led Canadian VC Fund, having a core portfolio of over 160 investments in more than 35 countries. I'm also a partner with GST Venture Studios, a Silicon Valley-based venture builder, and over the years I've arranged funding for startups and growth stage companies in diverse sectors like edutech, fintech, consumer, B2C and B2B, agri-tech, health tech, food tech, disruptive and deep tech, as well as non-tech sectors. Please do please do have a look at my website for the wonderful testimonials written by my clients. This month, I've been nominated as the top 10 women leaders in wealth management 2021, and my expert opinion is often sought in leading news channels and publications like VCTV, Business World, and I've participated in 155 talks all over the world. All these talks can be easily accessed on YouTube and VCTV streaming sites. Apart from this, I'm connected with 300 global investors and I pick up global deals. We are sector agnostic and typically we do $1 million to $25 million. And once again, thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much, Vandana. Always a pleasure. Tobias, welcome back to the show. A little intro and background as well, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks also from my side for having me. Definitely excited to be here today with all these amazing panelists. Just a quick background to myself. I'm originally from Germany, but now living in Asia for a bit more than 6 years. Spent a lot of time in China, working there in venture capital and also for an edtech startup. And then now as a principal with Blockchain Founders Fund, where we invest in emerging tech startups basically all across around the world. We have a bunch of companies in emerging markets such as South America, also the Middle East, and in Asia, of course. I just recently raised a Series A round in Cambodia, which was a very interesting journey because I think it's one of the most developing markets in Southeast Asia in general. So also some exposure on the startup side from fundraising. In addition to joining as out of Blockchain Founders Fund, I've been very involved in mentoring for funds like Plug and Play or Alchemist Accelerator. I'm also a venture partner of Republic of the US, an early stage fund. As far as Blockchain Founders Fund is concerned, we are investing in pre-seed to pre-A companies on an industry agnostic and geographic agnostic level, and currently have about 57 portfolio companies across 5 different continents. And yeah, excited to be here and share some of the insights.
Wonderful, Tobias. Excited to hear about this story in Cambodia and some of your experience here in just a moment. Frederico, welcome back. A little intro, a little background for everybody.
Hello, everybody. I'm Frederico from Brazil. I'm a founding partner at Lotus Investment Strategies. We are a global investment company in projects related to blockchain, both in the primary and secondary market. So we have our own funds. We also help investors to find good opportunities, from BTC mining to completely new initiatives in the crypto space, and and we also help financing with some of those projects. And since I'm out of Brazil, we do have some experience with developing countries and emerging economies.
Wonderful. Welcome back. And Harsh, introduction and background for everybody.
Hey Kyle, glad to be back on the VCTV US edition after a long time. Unfortunately, this time wasn't working out for the last 2 months, but hopefully we can make some more appearances down the line. So currently I'm a venture partner with our ventures, helping early stage startups raise funds, all the way up to $15 million, currently working on a green tech company from Canada, helping them raise 15 million, and a few other companies roughly in the range of $1 to $2 million. Additionally, I also help on an individual level. I'm helping a lot of startups, kind of go through the initial growth phases, right? How do you structure the growth process? What kind of marketing channels to use? How to help them with strategic connections, etc. That's what I'm helping out with. And I have around five companies at this point of time, which I'm advising right now to help them scale their business to the next level. So looking forward to some great discussions today. Thank you.
Absolutely. John, last but not least, little intro background, please.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Yep, so this is John, partner at Meet Ventures. So we are a boutique innovation consultancy firm, and we also do angel investments and early stage investments in tech startups, particularly in ed tech. So a bit of background about myself. I was formerly from KPMG Innovate and also SG Innovate. SG Innovate is a government-linked fund with about USD 200 million AUM, and was also formerly from Longhash Ventures, which is a blockchain fund, where I was the head of business development and helped to lead their accelerator program and invested in quite a number of blockchain tech startups as well. So at the moment, I'm focusing more on the edutech sector and more on the B2B focused edutech. And we have invested in a couple of startups, not too many, probably around 5 of them. Some of the companies that we've invested in, one of them was also co-invested by a billionaire founder in China. So yeah, I think that's a bit of a background. And in my role at Meet Ventures, we also do help quite a number of corporates to run their corporate accelerator programs. And in the process of running these corporate accelerator programs, we also do identify very high potential and high growth startups to invest in. Not all of them, but some of them. So some of the corporate accelerator programs that I've run, currently running, and also in the past include, for example, the Wingak Accelerator for big data startups, Longhash Accelerator for blockchain, Cisco Innovation Accelerator for IoT startups, IBM Watson for AI startups. Also running one currently for the Korean government for travel tech startups, and also another one which is also edutech related across the 6 universities in Singapore. Yeah, thank you.
Wow, it's quite a list of experience and activities that you're currently involved with. And I do want to circle back on ed tech, as it is a hot topic in Asia right now, particularly Southeast Asia, but on a global scale, we're seeing more opportunities and more people start to move into either building or investing in the future of education. But before we do, Tobias, I want to kick this off with you. I mean, you told us and teased this story about Cambodia and your experience. Tell us the story. What happened? What was some of your experience and lessons learned going through that fundraising event?
Definitely. Now, happy to share. So I moved to Cambodia mid of last year, and we raised a 5 million Series A round for a fintech startup called Click, which is basically a payment aggregator with a strong RegTech component. And we spoke to a lot of VCs in the region, from big players to smaller players, from CVCs, and of course strategics. And the challenge with Cambodia is, although it's a growing market and obviously moving very fast, and also from a consumer perspective, they show a lot of demand for just joining the consumer side of things. But obviously, from a discretionary income perspective and GDP per capita perspective, it's still very low. So you're just on the starting side of things. And with 60 million people, it's just hard to convince investors that you can scale a unicorn out of Cambodia. So we basically had a similar strategy than, for example, fundraising in Singapore in a bit of an early stage, which is that you obviously need to move out of Cambodia fast as possible in order to gain relevant market share in, let's say, the Mekong region, where you target Vietnam or Thailand as well, which then worked quite well, but it's still difficult for sort of later stage VC sort of take Cambodia seriously in a way. So it was a bit better fit for us to talk about and talk to strategics in a way, because they, in addition to just the monetary aspect, they also saw a lot of synergies from a company perspective, and that's sort of how it was easier than to raise the round. But the whole political situation of Cambodia obviously wasn't very easy as well from a fundraising perspective, but I still see a lot of development, right? Especially from a government perspective and also from local VCs. There's development and there is growth within the ecosystem. And I think that's just going to be sort of growing exponentially down the road in the next 2 or 3 years. I think we will see a lot more from Cambodia than we do right now, where sort of now it's a little bit hidden on the VC landscape in Southeast Asia if you compare it to Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam. But it's still a very interesting country. And I think for a lot of startups in that space, it really serves as sort of a prototype market, right? So if you can conquer Cambodia from a consumer perspective, if you are a teenager or anyone in sort of Phnom Penh, which is the capital, there's not much different to someone who is based in Bangkok, for example, right? The consumers are very homogeneous. They have different needs. They have different social platforms. They want to do different sort of the same things as well. So that's why it's easier to roll it out once you sort of conquered and proven your market fit within the smaller country Cambodia, and then sort of venture out into different countries in the region. And I think that has been working quite well for a number of smaller startups, and hopefully also for the company I was raising for.
Wow. So talked to a lot of local VCs, got to understand the local market, got some experience, and from that, we're able to help kind of navigate this as well. And in terms of opportunities on the ground, what else did you see that might be opportunistic for investors that are thinking about looking at the region, or even entrepreneurs that are building products and companies that you may have met during your time there?
Yeah, good question. I think one thing where it all started is, of course, a lot of concept which has been proven in different markets, such as ride-hailing, food delivery, that all sort of came up over the last couple of years, and it's now sort of developing where you have your own homegrown players such as Nam24, which is kind of competing with Grab and Foodpanda at the moment, but still holding through because it is a local grown company and just understands the market at its best. But what I see is also, and that's quite interesting for an early stage market as Cambodia, it's a lot of deeper tech solutions, right? I mean, blockchain, for example, there are some companies already in that space, and even the government launched Bakong, which is a blockchain-based payment switch, which is very interesting for a country like Cambodia, right? That they already sort of thinking on that kind of forefront of technology, and that is sort of reflected by a bunch of government organizations who push in the space and want entrepreneurs to succeed, right? Of course, it's on a smaller scale than comparing it to Singapore, no doubt about that, but it's still very interesting to see such a developing country already pushing into that front, right? I mean, they see a lot of stuff what's happening around, and obviously they want to be on the pulse as well. And that's sort of really nice to see from governments, NGOs, but also smaller sort of private accelerators, incubators such as Tech Startup Center or My Enterprise, or even UNDP launched a Blue Drive program, I think was called, where they incubated some of the founders on a very deep tech solution. Some of them raised funding, and some of them are around and really show good traction now. And now it's just about thinking more regionally, thinking more globally on that space, and really just try to to build something for the region rather than just build something very locally, right? And I think that's sort of the switching point for a lot of companies where true innovation is going to happen, where you step away from, I want to just build something for my country, and I don't want to copy stuff which sort of has been proven in different markets, but rather stepping out of that and sort of seeing the region as your target, and trying to understand, okay, what's actually needed, what is a local solution I can push out into the whole region, and then essentially driving innovation from the country, and not just like from basically copying other sort of proven concepts in the market. And deep tech is obviously growing very fast. The whole ed tech space now with COVID has been accelerated. Fintech, there are, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but like more than 20 active wallets in the country. So I mean, it's definitely growing on a very, very fast pace.
This is great. And Vandana, I want to come to you next. I mean, with this region and area that Tobias is talking about, is mentioning Singapore. You've done a lot of work there, based there, but also looked at Southeast Asia on a whole and some of the emerging markets or transformative markets on the ground. Share some of that experience that you've gone through, if you could, and some of the lessons learned. What worked, what didn't, just from investing within the region.
See, Singapore is a very, very developed place. The laws over there compared to the laws in India and other countries are much more easier, and compared to especially taxation laws. I'm not sure if you're aware or no, many holding companies are created in Singapore from India and other parts of the world, only because of one factor, that their taxing is very easy. Not only that, technologies like blockchains and cryptos are more accepted in Singapore. It is a very good place to work for women as well. Not only that, the technology is very, very highly innovative over there. They have all kinds of support there for each and everything. If we compare it to India, of course, India is reaching that place also, and there are many unicorns that have been created, but still we lack in lot many things, especially technology, backing from the government, the taxation especially, the infrastructure, and also the ease for women is still not completely there. It's 80% there. So I think this is where the comparison lies. In Jakarta in Indonesia, of course, it's very Muslim dominated again. So it's completely controlled by the military, etc. Again, for women, the laws are very weak. It's not easily a place where one can work or, have startups raising funds. So there's a total, difference there.
Yeah, and Harsh, I want to continue this journey throughout Southeast Asia. Let's come to India, but also some of the other areas that you look at and invest. And then, John, I'm coming to you. Frederico, I'm saving you. So don't worry, get ready. We're going to talk a lot about Latin America and South America. But Harsh, talk to us about anything further you're seeing in South America, and then also what you're seeing on the ground in India, which is a very exciting market full of opportunities, but also a lot of lessons to be learned before investing there as well. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Correct. So definitely India has seen a lot of landmark shift, right? This year has been particularly good for a lot of startups because last 2-3 years what has happened was a lot of VC money has come into the system. However, most of them weren't getting exits, right? This year with a lot of unicorns, we had a lot of unicorns this year with a lot of private equity money coming, and a lot of investors and VCs getting the exits, right? So now there's a lot of fresh capital which is available, which is there for reinvesting back into the ecosystem, right? That's why we are seeing a lot of good number of deals happening at Series A, Series B, Series C stage. And just one major victory which happened last week Zomato did their IPO last week, and it was a major game changer in India, because for the first time you had a company with negative revenues, negative profitability, and it did a very well IPO, and the results were completely oversubscribed. So that was a very good sign that the Indian retail investors are open to investing in a company which is not profitable yet, and that shows the maturity of the market now, and that's why a lot of international private equity players are now interested. I just had a discussion about 2 or 3 weeks back before the Zomato IPO with one of the major Singapore private equity players. They had presence across the world, and they were like, if you find across any good deals in India looking for 25, 30 million or even more than that, just let us know, because a lot of major private equity players are looking to invest in India, and that's become a huge focus, because now they are seeing that the market is becoming mature. And also, we've reached another stage in terms of startup development, right? Initially, what had happened was the first, about 7 or 8 years back, the first startups which originally came in India were originally kind of rehashes of the existing startup which were there in the US market, right? You had Flipkart, which was supposed to be similar to Amazon. You had Ola, which was supposed to be similar to Uber, right? Those kind of models were being rehashed. Now something very innovative is happening is businesses in India are coming up with something completely original models, completely localized business models, and focusing on local languages, right? So that's why a lot of interesting things are happening right now, and that's why India has become an amazing opportunity at this point of time to invest in.
And Harsh, talk to us about some of the lessons learned. I mean, if I want to enter the Indian market and start making investments, what advice do you have for those looking to do that for the first time? Maybe not being on the ground or not having been on the ground before.
Correct. So definitely the first and foremost I would suggest is find a local trustworthy person, a trustworthy network which you can confide in and trust in, right? Because what would happen is in India, like it could get difficult because the local and regional differences to truly at least in the early stages, at the seed level and the pre-seed level, until at least at that point of time you need a local person over there. Without that, just directly investing from an international market directly in India can become a little challenging. So that is the first step which I would suggest, and very thorough due diligence, not just in terms of the business details, but also in a lot of the financial fundamentals, whether the compliances are to the point or not. All that is extremely vital, because you will find a lot of startups which are over there, looking to raise funds, but you need to truly kind of grill down and truly get into the nitty-gritty before you actually take the before you actually decide to invest in the startup.
That's great advice, Harsh. John, I want to come back to you on Southeast Asia, but on a global perspective, since you're working in so many different industries, from blockchain to education. Talk to us about some of the experience you've had in and throughout Southeast Asia, and now kind of what some of those lessons have taught you about investing in emerging markets, specifically around blockchain and ed tech, since those seem to be two areas of focus for you.
Okay, so I'll touch on probably blockchain first. So my engagement with blockchain has been more active actually. I think in my previous role when I was at Long Hash Ventures, not so much right now. But I would say that things are probably still quite the same. And what we are seeing is that there are a lot of very good companies from all around the world coming over to Singapore, blockchain companies. Previously, when we were running the accelerator program for Long Hash Ventures, we realized that quite a number of applications come all the way even from like US, Canada, and even today, when I speak with my friends from the blockchain sector, there are quite a number of very good companies that have been invested by leading investors, leading VCs from around the world. So. I'm not sure whether you guys have heard of this startup called Mintable. So they are into NFTs. Previously, they were one of the accelerator programs participants of the Long Hash Ventures accelerator that I was also helping to run. And recently, if I'm not wrong, they were invested by Mark Cuban in the US. So they came all the way from the US, came to Singapore, set up shop, was here for a while to build their business. And then they went back to US to get their funding. And right now they managed to secure some good funding, and they managed to bring in some good co-founders or founding team members from Asia to support them as well, especially the developers from this region. So I think stories like that have been on the rise, especially as blockchain, as crypto prices have been generally on the up, although it has been falling and then now on the up again. But we see that in this part of the world, we have been able, Singapore in particular, we have been able to really attract quite a number of very good companies from all around the world to set up shop here. If not their headquarters, at least one of the regional headquarters. And I think, as what Vandana mentioned previously, right, one reason for this is probably because of a very, I would say, more open-minded and favorable regulations that the Singapore government is having towards cryptocurrencies and towards blockchain companies. And that also explains the influx of companies coming in here for funding, and also to hire good developers from around the region and using Singapore as a base. So I think that's my insights from blockchain. With regards to edutech, I think it's recently, I'm sure all of you have heard of the news, right? China's clampdown. But to be honest, I think we were quite lucky for Meet Ventures. Most of our portfolio companies are all in the edutech space, but we were quite lucky because we weren't really affected by this. The reason why we weren't affected by this is because I think the China's clampdown was targeted primarily at edutech startups that were delivering Chinese curriculum or school curriculum directly to the end consumers. So it affected a lot of online tuition centers, online curriculum providers and all. But for Meet Ventures, we focus more on the software side. So we focus more on the edutech enablers, what we call enablers of schools, enablers of institutions. One of our startups, for example, they do interactive whiteboard solutions, Microsoft PowerPoint plugins and things like that. So for enablers, edutech software enablers, this sector has not been affected so much, at least so far when I see things are going quite right. And yeah, so I think that's for the edutech sector. If I were to share a little more about the investments from Southeast Asia, generally speaking, perspective, I would say that generally speaking, there are definitely a lot of good companies coming out from different parts of Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is a very big region, so it's very difficult to put everything under one pie and just call it as a startup from Southeast Asia in one part of Southeast Asia will be the same as another part of Southeast Asia. It's very different. A startup coming from Singapore, for example, the expectations of valuations and all will definitely be higher than generally speaking, definitely higher than a startup from somewhere from, for example, from the Philippines, for example. So for angel investors, for example, there can be good companies that you might be able to identify from some of these neighboring countries around Southeast Asia, like Philippines, Vietnam, that you can actually invest and that have very huge potential to scale outside of their home countries. So for Meet Ventures, for example, so far we have invested in startups from, for example, Philippines, right? And one of them, they were formerly featured on CNN's equivalent of Shark Tank, and they were listed as one of the top 24 startups. So we invested in them, and at the time when we were investing in them, they were still at the idea stage, so the valuations were not high. And so I think Southeast Asia is, I would look at it as a gold mine for a lot of these good quality startups if you are able to source them out, especially at the earlier stages, because they are serving a very huge market, right? Southeast Asia itself, for example, Philippines itself is a homogeneous market of hundreds of millions of population. Indonesia, everyone is talking about it, but Indonesia is not as easy as Vietnam, because in every single part of Indonesia is broken down into many different islands, and in every district there is a bit of different cultural differences. But in terms of legal perspective, in terms of accounting taxes, it's still a homogeneous society. So I think if you can look into some of these regions, and I think Tobias mentioned that the startup from Cambodia, I think these are all very good opportunities, and there are a lot of good opportunities like that out there that we can tap on.
Absolutely. And speaking of opportunities, Frederico, I'm coming to you. Take us to Latin America and South America. You spent a lot of time back and forth within the regions and here in the United States as well. Talk to us a little bit about some of your experiences, some of those stories and lessons learned investing within the regions.
Okay, Kyle. We have seen an acceleration, especially here in Brazil, but for the whole Latin America, and some of the ecosystems in verticals are developing very fast. When you think about investing in startups, you need, well, a startup to be successful, you need to grow, and to grow, you need a big market, and you need investors to have options to exit, being growing and then selling to someone. What we have seen here is that some of those ecosystems now have much bigger players, so you have much more options to exit. And this is bringing money to the region, especially if you look at fintech, for instance. Brazil has become a recipient of a lot of money, a lot of checks. We have every day a new company being acquired or merging or receiving Series A or B. New bank has become a unicorn in 4 years, and there are other banks and other fintechs going in the same direction. So this has been a big change for us, and now we have a lot of opportunities. On the other side, when you have opportunities and you see companies and startups being successful, this also helps new entrepreneurs to pursue their dreams. So now we have not only success cases, but a lot of new companies trying to solve niche problems like specific niche markets with a financial solution just for agro companies, for instance. And speaking of agro, this is the other part of Brazil right now. We have a big market, and now we have bigger opportunities also for edtechs, agrotechs, and everything that's related to our economy. Brazil is a very young country, so education is a natural fit. And we are a commodity economy, and as a commodity economy, of course, there's a lot of opportunities in the agro too. A few years ago, it's funny because when you ask tips for investors, a few years ago, this was a major problem. How are you going to invest in Brazil, and then how are you going to exit from that investment? And now we have these answers in a much wider perspective, not only for fintech, but and in fintech you can include blockchain. That's our focus too, because now there is a lot of blockchain opportunities here on decentralized finance. Finance. Yeah, why I'm speaking a lot about finance, it's because Brazil is a very friendly country right now in regulatory affairs to crypto. We have a government that has been very friendly to crypto and to innovation in the financial markets. The idea is to bring competition, as we have, or we had until very recently, 80% of concentration in the sector. And right now we have a lot of options. So to invest in Brazil, some things hasn't changed. It's still good to have a local partner, both here, Argentina, Mexico. The whole region is growing together. So a few of the companies that started in Brazil are now going to Colombia, Mexico, and we have companies doing the other way around. So Bitso, for instance, that's the largest crypto exchange in Mexico, is and one of the largest in the whole world right now, has come to Brazil a few months ago, and it's making huge investments here too. So you still need to find that local aspect and understand the culture and understand how things work in each of these this country and the whole region overall. But things has been much easier right now as we are more engaged in the global ecosystems of venture capital and specific verticals too.
That's a great point, and great points all around. I think we've got a good starting view as to what's happening in various regions and emerging or transformative markets around the world. In today's closing thoughts, as we come around to everybody, because we're getting close to the top of the hour, what's one piece of advice, aside from local partners, what's one piece of advice you would give investors looking to invest either in your or another region of choice as well? And then, of course, where can they find you to connect if they want to continue the conversation and or invest within your particular region? So with that, John, I'm going to start with you. What piece of advice would you have for investors looking to invest in transformative markets? And then where can they find you to continue the conversation about EdTech and others?
Yep, thank you. So yeah, I think you can connect with me on LinkedIn, John Lim. If you search for John Lim Mid Ventures, you should be able to connect with me. I wouldn't dare say advice, but probably to just share some of my thoughts. I think one good way to really get in touch with some of the good startups is when if you reach out to some of the potential like accelerators, university programs. Some of these startups are quite hidden at the start, and it's always good from our perspective, right, to get in touch with the founders early on, because that will help you to be able to secure later on and potential opportunity to invest in them. Yeah, so I guess early relationship with the founders, I think that's one of the key points.
That's very good. Harsh, to you, same question, and where can you be found?
Correct. So one of the major areas which I would suggest is, try to identify local business models which understand the local consumer sentiment, right? Consumer sentiment across the world is different. So for the Canadian company, for example, which I was helping raise funds for, Indian investors are finding it very hard to kind of, wrap their heads around the kind of concept of how it's going to be selling in the US markets, because there are similar products available in the Indian market, but with the patent over there in the Canadian market, no other competitor could kind of sell the product, right? So it's very important if you're looking to invest in an international geography, you need to understand what the local laws and regulations are, and you need to understand how the local customer thinks, like what the business ecosystem is like, how the industry for that sector is structured over there, because each and every country has its own approach and its own kind of systems which are being followed, right? So that understanding is extremely important. So that's kind of following up on your point. And if anyone wants to kind of reach out to me, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn at Harsh Shetia. I'm easily available on LinkedIn, and I'm quite active over there. So happy to have some conversations.
Thank you, Vandana.
So my message for all investors is that have women on decision-making, decision-making areas in your team. Also give women lots more opportunities in the investment teams. Let them make decisions and manage money. Also, my message to investors is be open-minded about all kinds of startups, especially, if it is headed by a woman, because they have a lot of potential. Not only that, there are lots of good startups in fintech, edutech, agri-tech space that have come up recently. It will be nice if, they could have a look at those startups as well. And I think broadly, I would suggest investors from abroad to start investing in Indian startups because they have a lot of potential and talent over here. They just need a little backing. And I could be reached out to on LinkedIn or my website, www.convanto.com.
Thank you, Vandana. Tobias, to you.
Thank you. Yes. I think was very helpful for me, sort of when I was looking at Cambodia or Thailand, and now Singapore, and like a bunch of other countries, of course you can go to VCs and try to partner with them or try to, sort of share a couple of deals back and forth. But I think what is much more interesting in these markets is just come from a founder perspective, right? A best venture partner is essentially an ex-founder or a current founder, because the way that they're much more deeper engaged in the ecosystem, and by reaching out to universities, right, or government-funded programs, or even hackathons, all this kind of stuff, which is sort of now emerging in all these markets, I think you will get a much better understanding sort of how the ecosystem works and what the people are looking into and what they're concerned about. Because once it reaches a VC, it's already late, right? I mean, compared to a founder upfront. And I think especially investing early stage and building a community and building a reputation in the market, and also, just like building a relationship with the founders, or with people in their space who are active, who then potentially reach out to you because they know you, and refer them to their friends and family who potentially also working on something interesting. And I think that's sort of the way in these more early stage markets, when you really want to be on the forefront of what they're building, really helped me a lot in terms of, just analyze and get in touch with a lot of awesome ventures and people, of course. And I think that's true for a lot of different markets, even developed in a sense. Just my take on this. Where can you find me? I'm currently based in Singapore. If someone is here in the region, happy to meet for a coffee once COVID is getting a little bit more relaxed here. And otherwise on LinkedIn, I'm very active and reply pretty fast on Tobias Bauer, as you can see the name.
There we go. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, Frederico, close us out. Closing thoughts, and where can you be found?
I think it's a recurrent theme that the best piece of advice is to get localized. And this can be done by reaching to local investors, or as Tobias just mentioned, being part of the ecosystem. We are, for instance, we are now partnering with one of the biggest ecosystems in crypto for expanding in East Asia and Latin America. And we are trying to, besides the 200 million fund, to create opportunities to get in touch with local entrepreneurs. So this includes a hackathon, accelerator, all this kind of stuff. So the best piece of advice would be go local. You cannot invest in something you do not understand, and you do not understand really well, because otherwise you're not doing good investments, right? I can be found on LinkedIn. My name there is, I think, is the same, Frederico Mesquita, or at our website, leaseglobal.net. Thank you, Kyle.
Wonderful. And if you can't find Frederico because his name is different on LinkedIn, reach out to me and I'll happily connect you as well. But all jokes aside, everyone, thank you so much for your thoughts and insights today. And also all of the great stories and trials and errors of investing in transformative markets. Super excited to look at some of these and continue to have the conversation with each of you about what's happening on the ground. To our audience, thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, like, share, and subscribe to today's episode. Also check out as well the archive on letoken.com to hear from today's speakers and all speakers of the VC TV family. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. Please do reach out to each and every one of us on social media, but please do add context where you heard, where you met us, and what you would like to continue the conversation about. A big thank you to the Letoken team, to Maria and Hasmik for making today's episode possible. With that, everyone have a wonderful day. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Take care.